Off the west coast of Mexico is an area of the ocean called the Clarion-Clipperton zone, or it's sometimes called the Clarion-Clipperton fracture zone due to the cracks that have been created on the sea floor. The zone specifically refers to the special area of the seabed which covers an area about half the size of the entire United States of America. The seabed in this area is so deep that natural light can't make it down to the seabed. So once you go about a kilometre under the ocean, water has filtered out all of the light coming from the sun. Since this ocean area is around 4 to 5 kilometres deep, no sunlight makes it that deep. It doesn't mean that the area is either devoid of life or even any light at all, and certainly not devoid of anything interesting. Little naturally occurring light in the zone is provided by bioluminescent animals, which though there are no plants growing at this depth, the animals still can find some food to eat. This food either falls down from above or is brought in by ocean currents from other areas of the ocean. One common form of life in the area are nematode worms, which burrow into the silt covering the ocean floor, picking out anything nutritious that they can find within. This also means that the nematodes then in turn become a food source for larger animals, and of course those same animals can then find them in the mud and the darkness. So while this may be of interest for people with a passion for marine biology, that isn't all that's found in the zone. The nematodes sift through the silt looking for food. The silt itself is dotted with objects that the nematodes largely ignore. These are known as polymetalic nodules. They're basically lumps of metals of various kinds all mixed up together, resulting in a kind of clinker-like debris which is scattered all over the ocean seabed. These metals, and what should or could be done about them, and what impact they have on the ocean as a whole, is starting to get attention, but also at the same time creating a lot of debate. Now, the nodules contain a lot of manganese, along with significant amounts of nickel, copper, cobalt, with small amounts of rare earth elements. Altogether, these metals make the nodules highly desirable, especially when you consider that the combined mass of all these nodules is millions, if not billions of tons of metal. The potential of extracting these metals, of course, piqued the interest of various mining companies, along with various governments in the area. However, there are quite a few problems involved, starting with the issue of the nodules being 4 kilometres or more below the surface of the oceans. Next is the scattered nature of the nodules. It's unlikely for companies to be able to collect the nodules individually in a commercially viable operation. So the most likely method of extraction is some form of scooping up an area of silt and nodules, remove the nodules and then deposit the unneeded silt back onto the ocean floor. This is where many of the problems are likely to start, since along with the silt, the mining operation will also scoop up the nematodes, sea cucumbers, sponges, and other life living in the area. Potentially this amounts to impacting 8,000 different species, many of which haven't yet been studied by science, and almost all will be negatively impacted by any widespread mining activity. Some of these different organisms which rely on food that is relatively hard to come by have a very long life cycle, with possibly some being measured in thousands of years. This means that relatively minor impact on the seafloor could potentially kill off many species of life that are only found in this area of the ocean before they even can be properly studied, mirroring previous exploitations which resulted in numerous extinctions of newly discovered species. The task of the International Seabed Authority to sort out potential issues with mining operations, and the authority has already allowed mining in certain test areas to start, is facing calls from some environmental groups and even some governments to pause any mining operations and rethink those mining operations and re-evaluate them. However, there's also another issue at play here, which is initially overlooked, and that is the impact that nodules themselves have on the oceans and even on the wider world. And most people would think that nodules of random metals sitting in the dark under the ocean can't have much impact on the world. But these nodules may have a really serious role to play and aren't quite the inert bystanders they may first appear. So to start with, over a very long period of time, these nodules are slowly eroding away, adding some of their metals to the local ocean water, and these metals can then be incorporated into the exoskeletons of animals inhabiting the oceans. So by removing the nodules, you may have a wider impact on sea life, but the full impact of these nodules may get even weirder. The majority of the free oxygen in our atmosphere comes from plants, either on land or in the oceans. Plants use sunlight to manipulate carbon dioxide and water in producing glucose and oxygen. But these nodules are able to produce limited amounts of oxygen without sunlight. It is thought that nodules do this by splitting up seawater into hydrogen and oxygen by seawater hydrolysis. In theory, an electrical charge may be produced between the seawater and metallic ions in the nodules, resulting in splitting of hydrogen and oxygen in the seawater, producing free oxygen. I say in theory because the precise mechanism isn't yet fully understood and tested. But what has been measured are the high levels of oxygen at the depth of the ocean zone, where under normal circumstances you expect to have a bare minimal level of oxygen, since the deeper you go in the oceans, less oxygen is present. Some of the animals are slowly using up the free oxygen, and no local plants to replace the oxygen being consumed. Now, recent tests have confirmed that the nodules are indeed producing oxygen. What global impact this oxygen production will have, it's far too early to say, but removing nodules just for the short-term gain of the metals they contain may have a significant impact on oxygen levels in the water in the zone. We may want to call a halt to plundering and otherwise pristine wilderness before we've fully understood the implications of our actions, before we start to take any steps that actually can't be reversed.